Once upon a time, in a quiet corner of the city, lived a woman named Ruth. She was not rich, but her hands never stopped working. From morning till night, she sat in her small roadside shop, sewing clothes for people and dreaming of better days. Her dream was simple: to have a family, a roof she could call her own, and a man who loved her the way she would love him. Then came Daniel. He was calm, soft-spoken, and had a smile that could make a tired heart believe again. He wasn't perfect, but he was kind. When Ruth met him, he had just lost his job, and life had started showing him its true face. But Ruth didn't mind. She saw something in him, a man who just needed someone to believe in him. So, she did. She gave him her heart. And when he came one evening, holding her hands tightly and saying, "Let's build a future together," she said yes without blinking. She didn't wait for signs or second thoughts. She believed love was enough. Weeks turned to months, and they started planning to buy land. Daniel told her about a small plot on the city outskirts. It wasn't much, but it was something they could call their own. Ruth didn't hesitate. She sold her sewing machine, cleared out her small shop, and even borrowed money from her friend Chioma. Every kobo she had, she gave it to Daniel. He looked at her and whispered, "I never forget this." They started the foundation of the house soon after. Ruth would follow him to the site, sometimes with food in a flask, sometimes with her wrapper tied high as she carried sand in a pan on her head. The laborers would laugh kindly, "Madam, this one not true love." She'd smile, wiping sweat from her face. She was tired, yes. But she was happy. She believed this was how real homes were built, not just with blocks and cement, but with sacrifice. One day, while they rested under a mango tree at the site, Daniel turned to her and said, "Ruth, you'll be the one to arrange the kitchen. Put everything the way you want it." Her heart melted. The foundation of the house began to rise from the dry red soil. Ruth stood at the edge of the site, her feet dusty, wrapper tied high around her waist. With her own hands, she fetched water for the bricklayers, passed them pounds of sand, and even helped to hold wooden planks steady. The workers would sometimes stop and look at her, nodding with quiet respect. One of them said, "Madam, no be today you start to suffer. No women like you they enjoy later." She smiled but said nothing. She wasn't doing it for praise. Each word that went up felt like a part of her. A sacrifice cast in cement. At night, when her back ached from bending too long, Daniel would rub her shoulders gently and whisper, "When we move in, you won't lift a finger again. You'll see." She believed him. The little money she had left, she kept aside to buy curtains and a second-hand blender. She bought plates with flower patterns and folded them carefully into a carton labeled "kitchen things." That box sat beside her bed like a quiet reminder that soon, she would have a kitchen of her own. One evening, while she and Daniel sat under a mango tree near the site, she pointed at the house and said, "This will be where we grow old." Daniel chuckled. "I can already see you shouting at me to drop my shoes at the door." She laughed too, not knowing how far that door would eventually shut her out. It started with little things. Daniel began going to the site alone. At first, Ruth didn't think much of it. He would leave early, saying he needed to meet the architect or supervise the roofers. Sometimes he would say, "You've done enough, my love. Rest more." She believed he was being thoughtful, but the distance started to stretch. His updates became shorter. She'd ask how the tiles were going, and he'd respond, "Fine, fine. Everything is fine." He no longer asked her about cutting colors or kitchen placements. Decisions were made without her. Still, Ruth held on, one Saturday, she followed him to the site uninvited. The tiles had already been fixed. The front door was installed. And the walls? Painted a deep burgundy she had never chosen. She stood in silence for a long time. Daniel noticed. He smiled awkwardly and said, "You were busy lately, so I just made some small decisions." Ruth forced a nod. "It's okay." But in her heart, something tightened. The next week, Chioma visited again. They sat outside with a small bowl of roasted groundnuts between them. The evening breeze carried the smell of burning firewood from a neighbor's backyard. "Have you seen the land documents?" Chioma asked softly. Ruth looked away. "Chioma, please," she whispered. "Why are you talking like this? Daniel is my husband. We are building this house together." Chioma didn't argue. She only touched her friend's hand and said, "I know. But love doesn't replace paper." Ruth didn't sleep well that night. She kept turning on the mattress, eyes wide in the dark, the words dancing in her mind like shadows. "Have you seen the documents?" She hadn't. Not once, but she didn't ask him either. She didn't want to sound like she didn't trust him, and that silence was her biggest mistake. The day they moved into the house, the sky was bright, but Ruth's heart felt cloudy. It was meant to be a joyful day. The kind of day she had dreamt of when she gave up everything. The kind of day she thought would come with dancing, laughter, and tears of joy. But there was no music. No guests. Just her and Daniel, offloading a few boxes from a borrowed pickup truck. Still, she smiled. She arranged the curtains she had folded months ago. She wiped every tile with her own hands. She lit a stick of incense and prayed in every corner of the sitting room, whispering, "God, let peace live here." Daniel seemed distracted. He kept walking in and out, answering calls. She asked who it was. And he said, "Just work people." When she tried to take a photo of them standing in front of the new door, he said, "Later, later." That night, she boiled yam and fried eggs, their small tradition. They sat on the floor, using a throw pillow as a backrest. The house echoed their laughter as they ate, and Ruth whispered, "We are finally home." Daniel nodded, but didn't look up from his phone. The next morning, she woke up early, excited to clean and decorate. She opened one of the boxes and brought out their wedding frame. As she searched for a nail in his drawer, her hand touched an envelope tucked beneath his old files. She wasn't looking for anything, but the envelope slipped out. The name on it was bold and neat. It was the title document of the house. She froze. At first, she smiled, glad to finally see it. But when she opened the paper, her hands began to shake. Her name was not there. Her eyes ran across the page again. And then again, it read, Daniel Okachukwu and Sophia Obiora. Ruth sat back on the bed, chest rising and falling like someone had just finished a marathon. Who was Sophia? Why was her name there? Why wasn't hers? She waited. The hours felt like days. When Daniel returned, she didn't greet him. She just held up the paper and asked, quietly, "Who is Sophia?" Daniel stared at the document in her hand, then at her face. He didn't look surprised. Just slightly annoyed, like someone who had been caught but didn't see the need to explain. "Where did you find that?" he asked. Ruth's voice was low. "You left it in your drawer." "I was looking for a nail." He walked past her and dropped his car keys on the table. "You shouldn't go through my things." That was his first response, not an explanation. Not even a lie. Just defense. Ruth stood there, eyes fixed on him. "Who is Sophia?" He sighed deeply and finally sat down. "She's someone I used to know." Long ago. We did some business together. Ruth didn't speak, he continued. When I was processing the land papers, I used her name along with mine because, well, it was easier. Legal stuff. We started the land thing years ago, before I met you. But it didn't work out back then. Later, I just used the same name to avoid problems. She blinked slowly. So you've been planning to build this house with her all along? He shook his head quickly. No. I did this for us. You're reading too much into things. Then why not change the name? Ruth, it's not that easy. There are processes. Lawyers. It takes time. Besides, does it really matter? That question hit her like thunder. Does it really matter? She sat down quietly and placed the paper on her lap. Everything she had given, her shop, her savings, her pride, was not written in her name. Not even in pencil. That night, they didn't speak again. She lay beside him in bed, but it felt like she was lying next to a stranger. He slept peacefully, one hand across his chest. She stared at the ceiling, the silence screaming in her ears. In the morning, he acted like nothing happened. He kissed her cheek, picked up his keys, and said, I'll be back before evening. Please cook that okra soup I like. She nodded. She cooked it, but she didn't eat. The days that followed felt like slow poison. Daniel came and went like a man who had already moved on in his heart. He no longer asked if she ate. No longer touched her waist when passing behind her in the kitchen. No more playful teasing. No more my love. Everything became quiet. He began locking the second room in the house. She didn't know what he kept there, but the key never left his pocket. Once, she asked if she could use it to store her sewing machine. He said, that room is not for things like that.